The letter by Kalki G64. Adapted and modified by Kulwant Singh Sandhu. Contents: 1. The letter. 2. Grammar page. 1. The letter. By Kalki. Annapurani Devi, the founder principal of the well-known Devi Vidyalaya, was taking her customary evening walk in the big garden around the school. From a bungalow across the road came the strains of the Nadaswaram, stirring forgotten memories. The shadow of a momentary disturbance clouded her serene face, like a huge wave that rises above the quiet sea to crash upon a rock on the shore, only to recede as swiftly, so that calmness is restored. The wave's passage left a little water in the hollows of the rock. Tears stood in Annapurani's eyes. The school's vice-principal, Srimati Savitri Ma Lt., advanced towards her on the garden path. Annapurani Devi wiped her eyes and welcomed her with a smile. The women sat down on a cement slab under the neem tree close by. A perfect description of Annapurani would say that her hair had greyed through long years of service to women's welfare. The thick waves of silver above her forehead recalled white clouds resting in rows upon mountain peaks. Though her hair had turned white, it seemed impossible that she was over 50. Had she discovered the secret of eternal youth? Silver-crowned, tranquil of face and dressed always in pure white, Annapurani seemed to be the goddess Saraswati incarnate. The events of Annapurani's life were well known. The cruel fate of widowhood was hers at 9, before she reached the age of discretion. But her misfortune became a blessing to other unfortunate women. She returned to school, worked to educate herself and managed to take the BA LT degree. From then on, she devoted her whole life to the service of women who had been orphaned, widowed in childhood, or spurned by their spouses. Her body, soul and material wealth were dedicated to Devi Vidyalaya, established to fulfill those goals. Vice Principal Savitri was a young unmarried woman of 25. Immediately after passing her MA LT examinations, she had accepted the school job for purely financial considerations. But association with Annapurani Devi had transformed her. She began to wonder if she too should dedicate her life to the service of women. Sitting down on the cement slab, Savitri said, "Amma, I had a real problem today with poetry. When we came to the line, 'Love makes the world go round,' Padma asked me, 'What kind of love is the poet talking about?' She is a very naughty girl. There, you can hear them laughing. In another part of the garden the girls were playing throw-ball. Their tinkling laughter wafted in with the gentle south wind." "How did you answer Padma's question?" Annapurani asked. "I struggled to find an answer. It is obvious that the poet refers to the love between a man and a woman. But how can I explain that to these girls? It is quite difficult to explain such matters to young girls. I still remember how flustered my lecturer in Queen Mary's College became when she had to deal with this verse. Here we have young widows and girls thrown out of their homes by their husbands. How can I talk to them about romantic love?" Savitri halted in mid-speech. Recalling that Annapurani herself had been a child widow, she was afraid she had been tactless. She tried to smooth things over by adding hastily, "But Amma, honestly, all these things seem to be a kind of madness. Isn't love just an illusion, the useless daydreams of idle poets?" "Illusion, is it? Very well. I shall write and convey your views to Dr. Srinivasan." Annapurani referred to Savitri's impending marriage to Dr. Srinivasan. Laughing to hide her confusion, Savitri said, "Who knows? At the moment it seems very real, but who can say how things will turn out after a couple of years? Never mind that, Amma. This poet says that all good actions in the world are motivated by love. How can that be right? Let us take the example of our Devi Vidyalaya, which is now 25 years old. From Kashmir to Kanyakumari, there is no one who is not full of praise for this institution. And for your selfless service, in this case, how can the poet's statement be true?" Savitri: "I don't know if the poet's words are applicable to all the good deeds done all over the world. But if you think my labours have been of some significance, the poet's words are absolutely true. Love has been the inspiring source of all my efforts. Who can deny that? Your love for the destitute and the downtrodden is well known. I don't mean that kind of love. I mean the kind the poet talks about, the love between a man and a woman. If I have done any service, it sprang entirely from that love. Io. What do you mean, Amma? Tell me all about it, said Savitri, her voice trembling with excitement. Anupurani said there, do you hear the Nadaswaram from the wedding ceremony? The piper is playing the Ragam Nadik Kurinji so mellifluously. Listening to it I was lost in the past, long before I saw you. Tears filled my eyes as they never had before. Many years ago, Sembanarkoil Ramaswamy played the same raga at a wedding. Those days he was the star Nadaswaram player. Do you still remember those details? Amma, I heard you were married in very early childhood. I am not talking about my wedding. They got me married when I was 6 years old. At 9 I became a widow. Those events have not left a trace in my memory. Such early widowhood has its own advantages. Ah, you laugh. But it is true enough. If those events had taken place 2 or 3 years later, I would have been scarred for life, as usually happens. Because I was such a little child, they left me untouched. Anupurani paused, immersed in her thoughts for a while. Then she continued her story. I was referring to my cousin Ambujam's wedding. I was 16 when she got married. She was 2 years younger than me. Ambujam was deeply attached to me. I lived in my aunt's house from the day I became a widow. Everyone there loved me dearly and pitied me for my misfortune. My word was law in their household. When Ambujan's marriage was fixed, all the arrangements were made according to my will. It was I who chose the veshti for the bridegroom, the Nadaswaram troupe for the function, and decided on the sweets to be served at the feast. The night before the wedding, the bridegroom was formally invited to the function, and the engagement ceremony was performed. I stood in the hall with the women. I noticed that the gem-studded jewel in the bride's plate was about to fall off. I went up to her and fastened it. When I raised my head, I saw that the young man sitting next to the bridegroom had been staring at me. For a moment my whole body quivered. My heart swam. I was afraid I was going to swoon. By the grace of God, that didn't happen. I yearned to see his face again. I had not even dreamed that I could feel such a desire. I tried to control my thoughts. I clenched my teeth, but to no avail. At last, when I did glance in his direction, he had at that very instant turned his face away from me. I did not sleep that night. Ambujam's wedding went off very well. To outward view, I continued to be engaged in my tasks. But my mind had begun to wander in a world of its own. Whatever doubts I had were dispelled on the wedding day. His glances were certainly not accidental. They were deliberate. I too became aware of my own state of mind. Some magnetic power drew me to him, there. Do you see the full moon rising in the sky? The question made Savitri look up. I had seen the full moon many, many times before that day, but I never saw such beauty in it as on Ambujam's wedding day. Nor had I been so entranced by the sweet sounds of the Nadaswaram. The fragrance of sandalwood and jasmine had not given me so much pleasure until then. Unknown longings rose in my heart. Why can't I comb my hair and wear flowers as all other girls do? Why can't I use kumkumam or sandal paste? On the 3rd day of the wedding, I took Ambujam to where her in-laws were staying. Plaiting Ambujam's hair, the sister-in-law asked the crucial questions about the number of jewels the bride had, and how many more were to be made for her. My mind was not on any of this. Snatches of the conversation from the neighbouring room came to my ears. I listened attentively. The voice which spoke seemed to be his. How pleasant it was. How appealing. He was talking about the plight of child widows. He quoted from many savants who had condemned such brutal customs. He referred to several books by name. I remember his saying, read Madhaveya's tale of Muthumanakshi. At that point one of the others declared, "My dear boy, your eloquence is most convincing. Why don't you yourself marry Annapurani? Idiots, fools, all of you. Might as well bang my head against a stone wall as talk to you." I then heard someone get up and leave the room. It must have been him. In those 2 or 3 days, I gathered all the information I could about him from the conversations of his family members. He had stood first in the BA examinations in the Madras Presidency. He was much sought after in marriage, with people ready to offer even 5,000 rupees as dowry. Had I really become the object of such a person's affection? I could not believe my own good fortune. The bridegroom's mother became unwell on the 4th day of the wedding. To inquire after her, I walked up to the place where the bridegroom's party was lodged. I kept hoping to find him there by some chance. I had barely crossed the threshold when I saw him pacing up and down the hall alone. He came towards me with, "Whom do you want?" As I stood rooted to the spot, too stunned to reply, he swiftly placed a letter in my hand and folded my fingers over it so that it would remain unseen. Then he turned and walked away. I began to shake like a leaf in a storm. And yet I picked up enough courage to place the letter very carefully next to my heart. Then I went in. I was hardly myself when I spoke to the bridegroom's mother. She looked long and hard at me. "You came to inquire about my health, but what's wrong with you? You look sick." "All of a sudden I have a headache," I said, and returned home. I went straight to my room at the back and lay down upon a mat. Pleading ill health, I stayed there sobbing my heart out in the dark. After that I never saw him who looked like a god and took my heart away. Ayo. Why, Amma. Whatever did he write in that letter? In the letter, he had poured out his love for me. He was ready to make any sacrifice for me, to meet every opposition from the world. But he did not want to force me in any way. If I loved him and had the courage to face the world's derision, I was to hold a jasmine flower in my hand, either during the Nalangu ceremony that evening, or at the marriage procession later. Once I gave him the sign, he would make all the necessary arrangements. Then why did you lie there crying your heart out, Amma? Didn't you do as he said? No, I didn't. Moreover, since I had hidden myself away, he must have concluded that I did not care for him, that he had wounded my feelings. And the 4 days' dream of my life came to an end. But Amma, why didn't you follow his instructions? I don't understand. Savitri, even today I am ashamed to tell you the reason. I did not read the letter that day. I read it only after a whole year had passed. But during that time, I held it many times in my hand and wept over it. So that finally, when I did read it, more than half of it had been wiped out by my tears. Amma, what are you saying? At that time, didn't you? Yes, Savitri. It was the shame and grief I felt on the day I got his letter that impelled me to study further to get the BA, LT degree, and to render whatever service I could to womankind. On the day he touched my hand and put a letter into it, I did not know how to read. The tears which rolled down from Savitri's eyes shone like pearls in the moonlight. Was the piper merely playing the Ragam Kedaragaulai? Or was he pouring out all the sorrows of the world's great epics through his pipe? The letter, version 2. The garden of Divi Vidyalaya stretched wide under the April sky, its jasmine and neem trees casting long shadows in the fading light. Annapurani Divi, the school's revered founder, walked her evening path, her silver hair glowing like moonlight against her white sari. At 50, she seemed ageless, her tranquil face belying the years of service to women cast aside by fate. The distant strains of a Nadaswaram floated from a wedding across the road, its notes tender yet piercing, stirring a flicker of pain in her serene eyes. She paused, brushing a tear from her cheek, as memories long buried rose like waves against a quiet shore. Savitri, the young vice principal, approached along the gravel path, her dupatta fluttering in the gentle south wind. At 25, she carried the confidence of her LT degrees, but her steps hesitated as she noticed Annapurani's glistening eyes. "Amma, you're crying," she said softly, settling beside her on a cement slab under the neem tree's sprawling branches. Annapurani smiled, her face a map of quiet strength. "Just the music, child, the ragam Nadikurinji, it carries old memories." Savitri fidgeted with her dupatta, her thoughts drifting to Dr. Srinivasan's latest letter, urging her to set a wedding date. She had joined Divi Vidyalaya for financial security, a practical choice after her father's debts had drained their family. But Annapurani's unwavering dedication to orphaned and widowed girls made Savitri question her own path. Could she marry and still serve a higher purpose? Or was love, as the poets claimed, the only true calling? "Amma," she began, her voice light but curious, "Padma stumped me in class today. We were reading a poem, 'Love Makes the World Go Round.' She asked what kind of love the poet meant. I didn't know how to answer her. How do you explain love to girls like ours, who have known only loss?" Annapurani's eyes twinkled, catching the first stars above. "What did you tell her?" Savitri laughed nervously, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "That it's the love between a man and a woman, but I felt so foolish. My lecturer at Queen Mary's used to blush at that line, and these girls, widows, abandoned wives, how can I talk to them about romance?" She paused, her cheeks flushing as she recalled Annapurani's own past. "I'm sorry, Amma, I forgot your widowhood." Annapurani chuckled, waving a hand. "No apologies, child, but tell me, do you think love is just a poet's fancy, an illusion?" Savitri's thoughts turned to Dr. Srinivasan's kind eyes, his promises of a shared future. "Maybe it's real now," she admitted, her voice softening. "But who knows, in a few years will it fade like a dream? And what about your work, Amma? Divi Vidyalaya is known from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. Surely its legacy isn't built on something as fleeting as love." Annapurani gazed at the rising full moon, its silver light pooling in the garden. The Nadaswaram's notes wove through the air, now soaring, now trembling like the ebb and flow of her heart. "Savitri," she said, her voice steady but distant, "if I've done any good in this world, it was born of love, the kind the poet sings of between a man and a woman." Savitri's eyes widened, her breath catching. "Ayo Amma, what do you mean? Tell me everything." Annapurani's fingers traced the edge of the cement slab, recalling a time when words on a page were as foreign as the stars. The Nadaswaram's melody pulled her back to 16, to her cousin Ambujam's wedding, when the world had seemed full of promise. She closed her eyes and the years dissolved. She was 9 when widowhood claimed her, a ritual blur of shaved hair and white saris, her child's mind barely grasping the loss. Her aunt's family in Sembanarcoil took her in, their pity softening their love. By 16, Annapurani was the unspoken head of the household, her quiet wisdom shaping every decision. When Ambujam's marriage was fixed, she chose the Nadaswaram troupe, the sweets, the bridegroom's veshti, her authority unquestioned despite her youth. The wedding was a whirl of colour and sound. The Nadaswaram, played by the famed Ramaswamy, filled the air with Nadikurinji, its notes wrapping Annapurani in a dream she hadn't dared name. During the engagement ceremony, as she adjusted a gem in Ambujam's plate, she felt eyes upon her. She looked up to meet the gaze of a young man seated beside the bridegroom, a scholar, his face alight with intelligence and something deeper. Her body trembled, a quiver that reached her soul. She turned away, heart pounding, afraid she might faint. That night she lay awake, her thoughts a storm. She was a widow, forbidden to dream of love, yet his glance had awakened a longing she couldn't suppress. The next day their eyes met again, deliberate and unguarded. By the wedding's 3rd day she knew it was no accident. As she plaited Ambujam's hair for a visit to the bridegroom's family, snatches of conversation drifted from the next room. His voice, clear, passionate, spoke of child widows condemning the customs that bound them. Read Madhavaya's tale of Muthuminakshi, he urged, his words igniting a spark in her. Then another voice teased, "Why don't you marry Annapurani yourself?" A chair scraped, footsteps stormed out. It was him. On the fourth day, Annapurani visited the bridegroom's mother, who had fallen ill. Crossing the threshold, she saw him pacing the hall alone. "Whom do you want?" he asked, his voice low. Before she could answer, he stepped close, pressing a folded letter into her hand, his fingers brushing hers. "Read it," he whispered, folding her fingers over the paper to hide it. Then he turned and walked away. Her heart roared like a river in flood. She slipped the letter inside her blouse, next to her racing heart, and entered the room. The bridegroom's mother studied her. "You came to ask about my health, but you look unwell, child. What's wrong?" "A headache," Annapurani mumbled, fleeing to her aunt's house. In her small room at the back, she locked the door and sank onto a mat. The letter burned against her skin, but when she drew it out, the lines of ink marked her. She was 16, a widow and illiterate. The world had never thought to teach her. She traced the letters, willing them to speak, but they remained silent. Tears fell, smudging their ink, and shame swallowed her whole. She hid the letter in a tin box, sobbing into the darkness. The wedding ended and he was gone. She never saw him again. Annapurani opened her eyes, the garden coming back into focus. Savitri leaned forward, her face a mix of awe and sorrow. "Amma, what did the letter say?" Annapurani's voice was steady, but her eyes glistened. "I didn't read it that day, Savitri. I couldn't. I was 16 and I didn't know how to read." Savitri gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Ayo, but later." A year later I taught myself to read, driven by that shame. When I opened the letter, my tears had blurred half the words, but I pieced it together. He loved me, Savitri. He was ready to defy the world, his family, society for me. He asked me to hold a jasmine flower during the Nalangu ceremony or the procession, a sign that I loved him too. If I did, he would make it possible for us to be together. Savitri's voice trembled. "But why didn't you, Amma? Why didn't you give him the sign?" Annapurani looked at the moon, its light softening the lines of her face. "I was afraid of the world's scorn of my own heart. I hid in my room and he must have thought I didn't care. That dream ended with the wedding's last notes." Savitri's eyes brimmed with tears. "And that's why you built all this, Divi Vidyalaya?" Annapurani nodded. "That shame, that love, they drove me. I studied, earned my BALT and poured my heart into this school. If I couldn't have him, I could give other women what I lacked, knowledge, dignity, a future. His love became my purpose." The Nadaswaram shifted to the Ragam Kedaragaulai, its notes a tapestry of unspoken loves and unwritten futures. Savitri's tears gleamed like pearls in the moonlight, mirroring the ache in Annapurani's heart. Yet in the music, Annapurani heard not just sorrow, but the echo of her resolve. A life built not on what was lost, but on what she had given. From the garden's far corner, the girls' laughter rose, bright and free, as they played throw-ball under the stars. Annapurani smiled, her hand resting lightly on Savitri's. "Love, Savitri, is never an illusion. It's the spark that lights the world, yours, mine, theirs." Savitri wiped her eyes, her heart full. The Nadaswaram played on, weaving their stories into the night, a melody of grief and grace that would linger long after the music faded. 2 grammar page.